Welcome, everybody. Obviously, a little bit of a unique time today. We wanted to uh, we want to make sure we accommodated some of our fans out in Hawaii. Again, thanks for bearing with us with kind of the last second ish. I think Monday we sent out a notification that we were changing our typical every other Wednesday, 12 Eastern time slot to this 3 Eastern time slot, specifically for our fans out there in Hawaii. We got a chance to meet at NACAC in Baltimore a couple of weeks ago, and so we want to make sure we did kind of a special episode of sorts, which I think we'll do periodically to accommodate for the folks that have been previously getting up and tuning in at 6 a.m. So, and with that, we're going to have a little bit of a special guest today. Who's there? She is, Berta, and help me pronounce your last name, Berta.
Leo.
I'm sorry. Was it Leo?
Leo.
Leo.
Like meow, but with an L.
Meow. Leo. All right, got it. Again, just kind of obviously, I was just telling whoever's tuning in here that we typically are 12 Eastern time. Now we are 3 Eastern time for our special guest here. We want to, well, listen, it's our pleasure. You're the one that's usually tuning in at 6 a.m. here. So we'll have a little bit of a different deal today, right? And first of all, same as always, any questions you have with anything, financial aid, scholarships, whatever, ask them. I'll do my very best to answer them. So whatever questions you're getting, whether it's new FAFSA changes or what are schools going to do with EA, ED, let us help you and make sure that we're getting those questions answered. But I want to kind of ask Berta a couple questions here, get to know her a little bit, get to know what type of what's different in terms of sending kids off to college in Hawaii versus what I think most of us are used to and on the mainland here. And then specifically, Berta, I think, has some questions in terms of how we partner with schools. I want to know a little bit more about her schools, and you guys can be looking over our shoulder while we do this. Well, first of all, Berta, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening, and nice to meet you.
You're welcome. Good to see you again.
Yeah, and well, that's right. I guess good to meet you virtually here. But so, how long have you been a school counselor?
I have been a college counselor. This is my 14th year, my 4th year here at Iolani, and previously I spent a decade as a college counselor at an international school in Taiwan.
Oh, cool. And were you in Taiwan, or were you doing that
Yeah, I was in Taiwan.
That's pretty cool.
And so it was an American AP curriculum, students going all over the world, but by nature of being an independent international school in Taiwan, cost was much less of a concern than it is for families here in the US.
Got it. And where did you grow up?
Oh, I grew up in LA.
Okay.
So California native.
Whereabouts in LA?
Torrance.
Okay. Yeah, I know that my wife grew up in the Valley, so still have in-laws in Tarzana. And where did you go to undergrad?
I went to MIT for both my undergrad and my master's.
How about that? But
yes.
You and my wife are star-crossed people. She works at MIT.
Oh, okay.
For you, and I'm in Salem here, so I'm Boston
yes.
is my town. Awesome. And then when and how did you decide to get into the college counseling world?
Well, what I tell students is that growing up, I was the child of immigrants from Taiwan. So they had certain expectations about what kind of college I would go to, what kind of major I should do, and what kind of career options were available to me. So I went to MIT. And then I remember, like, backing up, I think I had very good self-awareness as a junior in high school. I wanted to go to an all-women's liberal arts college and study history, and my immigrant parents were horrified at this idea. And so I ended up applying to engineering schools, but engineering schools with strong humanities, social science requirements. Found myself at MIT, and then after 2 years realized engineering really wasn't for me. And I can still remember like the silence over the phone when I said, I'm going to, stop pretending to be a chemical engineering major and switch my major to political science. And yeah, and I do remember like being in a career center and doing an assessment prior to this conversation with my parents. And then the counselor was like, oh, what do you think of this profile? I'm like, oh, this is so like me. And he was just like, well, very few engineers have this profile. And I was like, yeah, about that. And I remember some of the careers listed were like social work educator. And I remember telling these are not options available to me right now. And so after I graduated, I went and I worked in a number of different industries for I think about a decade before I found my way to education. And I do remember my last job before I became a counselor. I was counting down the minutes every day until the end of the workday before I could get off work. But once I found counseling, at one point someone asked me, how long have you been doing it? And I realized I had been doing it for a decade, but hadn't even noticed because there's always something new to learn. It was obviously that fit for me that I really enjoyed. And so I didn't notice the time.
And did you win your parents over, or are they still, I mean, because you check the first two boxes in spades, MIT and chemical engineering to get started, and then it's just
Well, I've never, I don't know, been unemployed living in the proverbial basement playing video games or something like that. So I think they came to terms with it.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to hear that, and good for you. I can't imagine. I imagine that took some courage, I would guess, but you found where you're meant to be. And then it was okay. So then you're in Cambridge, graduate MIT, and then where's your journey take you after that?
I went to Taiwan for what I thought was a 6-month internship, and it ended up being a 19-year stay. The last 10 of which I was at the international school. But in the interim, I worked doing corporate communications in the semiconductor industry. I worked in finance for Lehman Brothers. I worked for a startup. I did a number of different roles in different industries and corporations.
That's pretty cool. And then what brought you to Hawaii?
Just like this, our kids were getting older, and then so are my folks, and wanting to be a little bit closer. And my connection to Hawaii was that in college, on my floor was a lot of the leadership team of the Hawaii Club. So that was my best friend is from Hawaii. And so when I was looking over at job listings and I saw the name Iolani, I thought, oh, this is a familiar name. Let me take a closer look. Because I was casting a wide net.
Very cool. And then how long have you been at your current school there?
So this is my 4th year. We moved in the middle of the pandemic in summer of 2020 to Hawaii.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And I don't, and how big's the high school?
So this is a picture of Iolani behind me. We have, let me see this. Yes, this is our Sullivan Center for Innovation. So we are, I suppose our head of school would say we are the top independent school in Hawaii. We are definitely very academic, state math champions for the last 30 years. Our students in the Sullivan Center do independent research. I don't even understand, like, I go to their presentations and I try to grasp it, but very advanced research. We're 2,200 students, K through 12, and in the upper school is grades 7 through 12, but 9 through 12. Currently, we're at 259 this class. This is a bit smaller class, but grades 9 and 10 are pushing 300
Got it.
students.
Got it. And then, and I'm assuming a high percentage of those, if not all of them, are going off to college somewhere.
Yes. So given our very academic reputation, near 100% go off to a 4-year college. I think in the 4 years I've been here, maybe one student has like enlisted, and less than a handful have gone to the community college route,
Got it.
2-year
Got it.
college.
In any just very rough idea, just curious of how many students each year stay in Hawaii versus come over to the mainland?
During the pandemic, it was slightly higher, staying in Hawaii, obviously. I think roughly about 15% stay in Hawaii, and the rest go off to the continental US or abroad. So we have students that go to Canada, UK, France, Japan.
And anything,
So,
I'm just curious, anything from your perspective that's, and again, maybe you don't have, I don't know, haven't been on the other side of the fence, I guess, but that's unique about Hawaii residents going off to college and
well, I think from a financial aid standpoint, a fairly high percentage of residents in Hawaii send their kids to independent schools. Um, and and for me, coming from a more privileged international school background, I was really surprised at how cost conscious many families were here. And for many families, it's been a huge financial sacrifice to send their kids to Iolani. And the cost of living here in Hawaii is so high. So, like a few years ago, the median price of a single family home in Honolulu was crossed over $1 million. And so, like, families are making sacrifices in that they're not going to vacations, or like all of a high proportion of the budget is going towards their kids' education. And then and we do have a financial aid program. And so what I see with some of our families is that they assume the cost of college will be the same as the cost of independent school, and they'll get the same amount of financial aid. And then it shocks them when they realize college is a whole nother ballgame. And so recently, what was it? I forget who I was talking to, but for me, the worst part of the job is in April when I have a student sobbing in my office because they've worked so hard. And our students at our school really, like our teachers, administrators, they really push them really, really hard academically. And then they get into college, and then the parents see the bill and are like, we can't afford this. And I'm very thankful that our state flagship at least still has a commitment to access and is accessible to many of our students, which I know is a different situation, say, in California or New York.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. I mean, I would say one of the hardest parts of this whole, process is when that happens, when the cost, the reality of the cost comes to fruition when it's almost too late.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think that's something very common that we see at independent schools, where the assumption is, hey, private colleges are probably just like private high schools, and we go here for 50% off. So it's probably going to work out that way for private colleges too. And to your point, it's just not necessarily the
Right.
case.
And then I think, yeah, like that home equity piece. A couple of years ago, one of my colleagues created a fictional family of 4 in Hawaii and plugged it into over 100 different colleges, net price calculators, and then the difference between the highest and lowest was $70,000. And even though some colleges say, oh, we take into account like there's a cost of living adjustment, I don't think it quite accurately captures it in Hawaii. I mean, 85% of our food is flown in. And then you have this economy that's highly dependent on tourism, which I think skews things, so that regular ordinary people in Hawaii, you have the highest percentage of the state population, I think, out of all the states in the United States that are asset limited, income constrained, and like employed. So almost everyone I know has a side hustle or two jobs or something just to make ends meet.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I say almost every time I talk about the system as a whole from a meta level, and that's the cost of living technically is a variable in the calculation, but it doesn't align with reality, right? Like it's something I say all the time. Hawaii is a good example, right? I'm here in Boston, and so you know, for a family of four here that's making $250,000 in the suburbs of Boston is completely different than if you're making that in South Dakota, right? Just like it is in
Yeah.
Hawaii, and it really doesn't account for that. So it you know, again, it's just another huge challenge where families that section. Let me answer a question here. Okay, CSS profile in the parent retirement section is a required question asking current value. Good. Yeah, so I mean, look, on the CSS profile, they're going to ask you about your retirement accounts. Technically, the balance of those accounts are not supposed to be considered as part of your financial aid eligibility. We see some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, whatever we have in retirement is not going to count against us. For educators, you don't have to put anything around your pension. Okay, so you don't have to put anything around your pension in terms of the balance of that. It's really just talking about 401ks, 403bs, 457s, and your traditional Roths and IRAs. You know, and in terms of the rationale, what colleges say, how they defend even asking that question if they don't consider it, is they say it's one of their checks and balances where they can say, well, if your income and non-retirement savings are this, we just want to see if that aligns with your retirement, right? That's how we see some colleges answer that question. Other colleges have just told us explicitly, you know, off the record, if we think a family's retirement is overfunded, we will consider that and essentially hold it against them. Or other colleges will say, if we think a family has a ample amount in retirement and they go to appeal for more financial aid, we might hold that against them and look at that. On the flip side of that, if your retirement is what you would consider to be underfunded, this is something that we would want to talk about in an appeal, especially to your point around, Bert, around home equity, where we could be like, if we're a family that has a decent amount of home equity, but we don't have a lot in retirement, and we're talking about a school that considers home equity, that's something we would want to work into the appeal to say, you know, hey, look at, yes, we have some home equity. That's basically is our retirement, right? That narrative has proven to be effective somewhat consistently. And then the other thing to consider is that the CSS profile is a kind of catch-all form, but not every college looks at every question. So there's some colleges that, even though that you're being asked these hundreds of questions, colleges will just cherry pick and pull what they actually need and calculate. So some colleges won't even see what you put in the retirement because they're truly not looking at it. So just kind of same as always, comes down to exactly who we're talking about. Okay, so sorry for the interruption there, Berta, but tell me, so in terms of you guys, you know, in your school, what are you thinking in terms of how, if at all, you want us to fit into this thing, or what questions can I help answer for you? And
yeah, so in years past, we have directed people to complete net price calculators, but obviously no one knows this year. And we offered a CSS profile workshop. We had a financial aid administrator from Santa Clara last week hold a workshop that just walked parents through how to fill out the form. But just before the workshop, parents were asking me, oh, this will give me an estimate, right? And I'm like, no, this is just the nuts and bolts of filling out the form. Where, I mean, for the schools that do take the CSS profile, I guess their net price calculators are going to be more likely to be accurate than the ones that are just FAFSA only. And so one thing we discussed as a department is, let me see, we didn't want some parents to feel like they had to pay more out of pocket for an extra service. And so we were curious about the free versus school license.
Got it. So, I mean, in terms of, let me just give you a visual here. I'll give you two visuals, right? So let me share my screen here. So in terms of how we partner with schools, right, from a high level, plenty of schools we partner with, there is no budget to speak of, they're negative budget, whatever, right? And so with that, we still provide the free curriculum, right? So we'll still provide any education that they want. Some high schools have us do everything that we offer. Some schools just cherry pick and say, hey, we already have a CSS profile night, but we would love a night on FAFSA changes and the appeals or whatever, right? So that part is always free. And then in terms of the technology, right, everybody has, even if you just found us randomly off the internet, everybody has a free version of the platform, but some of the features are ring fenced, right? And the features that are ring fenced in the free version is families can only put 3 colleges into the platform, right? And they're not able to use this advanced search feature, which basically says, hey, I just want to go see, based on the types of schools that I like and what I'm thinking about majoring in, I want to go see who's most generous with merit-based scholarships based on my student, or who's most generous with financial aid. So this advanced search feature is behind the paywall or whatever, right? So and if there's a family that just, again, off the street says, hey, I want to upgrade from the free version to the paid version, they pay $149. Okay, so for the schools that work with us for free, that don't have budget, right, they say, we provide the education, we provide the free version of the platform, and if a family wants to upgrade, they opt in and do that for $149. For schools that have some budget, right, the amount that we charge is based on the amount of seats, so essentially in the amount of kids in the school, right, or in the, say, senior and junior class that they want the ability to have access to the platform. It's per seat. Is the lowest price that we go is $2,000 for a year for the school, because essentially that's our hard cost to set up a high school on the platform. But then that way, not all the parents have the free or the full version of the platform for free. You, as the college counselor, and anybody in your office has an admin portal. So for example, you get to see into any families too. So you get to see, now what these colleges are going to cost these families, not in April, right? And then we provide the curriculum just for your families, right? Usually for high schools that don't have a budget, we provide the education, but usually we'll group other schools in with them, essentially. Does that make sense in terms of the differences? Yeah. So those are, I don't know if you have any other questions as it pertains to that, but those are kind of the big difference.
So for roughly 600 students, what would the cost be there?
$3,000.
Okay.
And obviously, I mean, you talk to the powers that be on your team, but we'd be motivated to make it happen for you. So, but that would be kind of our standard operating procedure for that number.
Okay.
Any other questions on that front?
Is there onboarding to get students onto the platform, families onto the platform?
Yeah, so two different ways to, again, broadly speaking, two different ways we can do that. Some schools, if you want us to onboard them, you just say, here's the names and emails for the 600 families that are going to be on the platform, and we get them on the platform, right? We onboard them. Option B is that we basically give you a link and a landing page and a coupon code and instructions where you would communicate that communicate that directly to your families and hopefully get them to opt in yourself. So those are kind of the two options.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I can't think of anything at the moment.
Okay, I have two more questions for you if you'll entertain it.
Sure.
The first one is going back to kind of where we left off. I guess the one short one, are you happy with your career move decision?
Yes, I think my department, we all bring different skill sets to the office. So I was a one-woman show for a decade back in Taiwan. So it's really nice to be part of a collaborative space where, like I said, we have these different skills that we bring to the table, but philosophically we're all aligned. So that's really, it's a really nice mix that way to be able to trust and turn to my colleagues, you know, because sometimes you just get stuck in your head, and just to get that fresh perspective
It's great
when
to have.
working on a letter or
Yeah,
with a student situation.
absolutely. Need a sounding board or a fresh set of eyes sometimes. And then with that, you hinted at one, right, where you said one of the least favorite parts of your job is in April, you have a senior that got into the school, and then the money gets real and a family has to say, I'm sorry, we can't send you to
Mm-hmm.
the school that you weren't. That's a horrible part of the job. Are there any other times where you're like wondering, oh, you know what, maybe Lehman Brothers wasn't so bad?
And no, that's, I think it's when as a college counselor you have experience in the field and you try to head things off, but students or parents don't get it. Um, and then you're in a situation where it's like I tried to head it off. So like another situation was we also have a small boarding program at our school. So about 10% of the 9 through 12 are residential life students. And so I had a discussion with a mom last year because their child had a non-English name. And I said, well, what is it on the passport? Because you need to be consistent. And I've seen it spelled two ways. And if you have a space between like the two syllables or a hyphen or no space, just pick one, make it consistent. And I got a long talk about how names are in their culture. And I was like, that's nice, but you need to be consistent. And then what happens? They weren't consistent. And so they freaked out because, you know, it was just past the early decision deadline. And NYU says they don't have my file. And it's like, we had a whole 30-minute conversation about this.
Yeah, and it's like it brings I can very much relate to a version of this, right? As we still work with individual families, so it's like, guys, it gives us no pleasure to say I told you so, but here it is documented, right? And to that point exactly, it's like this is I hear you loud and clear. We did not make these rules. These are just the rules, and this is how it's going to work, whether we agree with
Mm-hmm.
them or not. So yes, I hear you loud and clear about that one. Like, please just listen to me. We've done this before, right? Yes, I get it very much so. Um, okay, well, I think for me, I've enjoyed getting to know you a little bit. Very cool story.
Same, thank you.
Now, do you consider yourself a Hawaii lifer now? Are your roots planted there, or what are we thinking?
I really like living here, especially for my kids growing up in Asia. I think there's a nice blend of that culture. It is not the continental US. The culture is very different here. I think there's a real sense of place, and I've been enjoying learning about Native Hawaiian culture and the issues that their concerns, the community that here. Um, And so I'm very conscious to say that I'm a resident of Hawaii, but I am not Hawaiian. Yeah, but it's been nice learning about this and seeing, and I think that's part of also something I'm conscious of when my students are thinking about college, because they're used to for many of them, they're used to a very tight-knit culture, and where you call the adults in your life auntie and uncle, and there's someone looking out for you. And some colleges have been very successful. Like I didn't Pacific University of Oregon, they have a really high students from Hawaii population, and so part of what they do is like monthly Zoom meetings for parent networks to just gather together. And so like I knew that parents in our school were very involved, and I thought that that was just a my school thing, but I'm starting to realize it's a Hawaii thing. Like just this whole collectivist, like if something happens, to know that there's an auntie or uncle that can keep an eye out on your kid and that sort of thing.
Takes a village type of deal, right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, yeah, that's insightful. I'm fascinated with Hawaii culture too, and I do. It's on my short list of places that I need to go visit, and we'll get there at some point. And if you'll be so kind to show me around, we'll take you up on that, or at least give me the hot
Sure.
spots when I get out there eventually.
Of course.
Okay, good. And how old are your kids?
5th grade and 8th grade.
All right. So we got a little time, but it'll sneak up on you, I would guess.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, listen, I think you're beyond the time that you said that you could offer. So I want to be conscious of your time, and I really appreciate you jumping on, and continue to listen in and write in and let us know how we can help you. Hopefully we get to formally work together in some capacity here, but either way, it was awesome to chat for a little bit.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Barta. Have a great day. Feel better too.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.